F3 Nation, it's Tommy Boy with episode 100 of the Stuff Worth Trying podcast. This week, we have a deep dive conversation with Judge Guyton, also known as Jag, out of the Rock Hill region. We've talked a lot about what it means to be a good man, a good husband, a good father, or better said, a great dad. But what does that look like when it goes missing in the family setting? We have a phenomenal conversation today about why male leadership matters in the home, what it looks like when there is no male leadership in a home, and how that impacts not only the individual, but the community. For example, did you know that fatherless children have more difficulties with social adjustment and are more likely to report problems with friendships and manifest behavior problems? Many develop a swaggering, intimidating persona in an attempt to disguise their underlying fears, resentments, anxieties, and unhappiness. When all is said and done, this is definitely stuff worth trying.
Looking good, Italian job.
I'm feeling good, Tommy boy. It looks like you've got some swag on, a little F3 action on the hat. Looks like you're almost getting ready for a grow ruck. Is that? Am I assuming correct?
The rumors are true. We'll be headed downrange next weekend to Fort Bend. Looking forward to that. We'll get to serve alongside Bloodhound. This time he's C1. And then Seagal is T1 or T2, depending on what reports you're looking at. But who cares? Because the trainer role is such a great dynamic of the two guys that are together. You and I have served. I think our both time as trainers was we're together alongside Slaughter, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, Slot Dog. That's right.
Yeah, and as you know, like that role is there's just something about it, man. I mean, the cadre role is so important and obviously pivotal to the overnight support and success of how those men get sharp. But I'll tell you, man, I love being in that trainer role and just watching guys scribble down notes and dive into the material and extract things from it that perhaps they had not seen or heard before when they were reading it on their own or with other men. It's just, I mean, I could go on and on. It's just a hell of an experience, and I'm looking forward to spending it with the fellows of Fort Bend.
So I'm going to drop a little bit of a teaser out for those who are listening, to our tens of listeners, including your mom and our in-laws, all that good deal. Yep. But I'll tell you, we brought Ralph from St. Louis, and he was a guy who's been featured, Men's Health and all kinds of different publications. We brought him to England with us, and he wrote an article, and we're probably going to be releasing it in 3 phases, so you can get a feel for the whole event from an outsider's perspective. So Ralph has written something. I haven't seen it yet, but sometime in the next couple weeks, we're going to be dropping little nuggets. So guys who have not participated in one of these events can kind of get a feel for it, especially going overseas. Our first international GTE. So that's the little teaser, setting it up. But I'm going to ask you, what are we talking about? And then I'm going to go into an intro for a friend of mine who we're talking to today. So what is the topic today, TB?
Yeah, I think I'll set it up just like I did before we hit record. I think it's easy to assume a lot of things in life. Whether or not the assumption is that everybody has everything that we have too, or everyone experiences life just like we do. So why are they having problems when we don't, or vice versa? And I think anybody who has spent a modicum of time in the trenches, whether it be in the gloom or living life with a partner, whatever that looks like, realizes that assumptions are bad news. And so today, because we want to connect guys to opportunities and not just talk about virtuous leadership, but also talk about the impact that virtuous leaders can have. We thought it potent of a topic to bring in an expert in what it looks like when there is a lack of virtuous leadership, specifically in a family setting. So I'm going to pass the ball over to you and let you give an intro.
All right. Now, if I stumble over my words, it's because I'm reading. I don't read good. Yes. Words are hard.
We should open a school.
That's right. Very small. Judge David G. Guyton was born in Rock Hill, South Carolina. He's father of Caleb and Hannah and husband to Crystal. Judge Guyton received his BA from Furman University and graduated from the University of South Carolina School of Law. He also graduated from Naval Justice School and the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College. Upon admission to the South Carolina Bar, Judge Guyton served 3 years active duty as judge advocate in the United States Marine Corps. is a Desert Shield Desert Storm veteran prosecuting courts martials at trial council in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain as part of the First Force Service Support Group in Camp Pendleton, California. He joined the South Carolina Army National Guard as captain in March of 1992 and retired as the state judge advocate for SCAR-NG with the rank of colonel in August of 2017 after 32 years of military service. So Colonel Guyton has served in the 262nd Army Air Missile Defense Command, the 228th Signal Brigade, and as a state military judge at Joint Task Force Headquarters in Columbia, South Carolina. Upon release from active duty in 1991 with an honorable discharge, he returned to Rock Hill to practice law. He was elected to the family court bench in February of 2010, re-elected in 2013, and again in 2019. He also served as the associate city judge for the city of Rock Hill from 1999 to 2009. Amongst a bevy of awards and community service legal aptitude, he's an F3 leader in Rock Hill, South Carolina. He's my friend and a man I respect immensely. Please welcome Jag to the Stuff Worth Trying podcast. Jag, glad to have you on board, my friend. How are you, brother?
I'm doing well, and thanks for inviting me. But my head probably won't fit on the screen now after hearing all that. It probably looks really, really big. But I appreciate the impact, and the discussion topic is really something that we need to talk about. And I do have a special perspective as a family court judge. Now, I do want to say to begin with, it's the standard non-attribution clause. What I say today is my opinion, my view. It doesn't represent South Carolina judicial branch or necessarily any other judges.
Do we have to bang a gavel after that statement?
No. If Dustin starts acting up, I'll bang it a couple of times.
We'll have a bailiff come escort me out.
Well, Jag, listen, I was excited because when IJ pinged me earlier in the week, he's like, I have an idea, I have a guest. It came in a really unique time with a couple of kind of satellite conversations I've been a part of and have been the beneficiary of overhearing what guys are chopping up, and it all had to do with fatherhood and the wondering and pondering of am I a good dad, and also had a really deep conversation with my own father, who shared some things about growing up with his dad, who to me was Papa, and he was the big gentle giant who was in the Navy and gave great piggyback rides and was just wonderful. But I found out some other things that my dad had a really tough time with him. And obviously we could chalk it up to it was a different time. The America was a different country back then, but abuse is abuse, right? And getting kicked because you can't hold a lug nut in place while your dad's trying to tighten it down. That's repetitively, not just a kick in the pants. That's a big deal. And so it puts a different light on my dad, who I just love immensely. And everybody who's met my dad, loves my dad. And that's not really an overstatement at all. And so to know that he had to make specific choices to not repeat a pattern, it's hopeful, I guess, is the best word I can think of, because if he can do it, then it's easy to assume that anybody can do it. But as I said a moment ago, assumptions get us into a lot of trouble. So that's a long way to say welcome to the show again, but also I'm really anxious and excited to hear your experiences, and maybe we can unpack some solutions together.
All right, that sounds good.
So Jag, I forgot to ask a question from the very jump. I know the answer because I was there, but how long have you been doing F3 and how'd you get the name?
It's been 7 years this April, and I got the name Jag from being in the Judge Advocate General Corps with the military. So I was a JAG Corps officer, and I let it slip to somebody that might be an appropriate name. And so we were able to get that out there. And it's really neat because now I've got shirts and hats and things that say Jag on them. And so F3 guys think that I've got my own line of wear.
And Tommy Boy, I forgot to tell you this. I was at the celebration, the ceremony when Jag was appointed colonel, which was really cool. That was that was several years. That was 5-6 years ago. But I was there for that one.
that was you were there for my retirement. And that was 6 years ago. It's gone fast, and I really appreciate it because I hadn't known you very, very long, and I had 7 or 8 guys who came down to Columbia, South Carolina for my retirement ceremony, and that was a big deal. And I'll certainly be first to say that the F3 men have helped me transition out of having military in my life for 32 years, because there's a brotherhood there, and I really saw it as leaving one and joining another. And it's at all levels, it's been something that I've really, really enjoyed.
Good deal. So, hey, Tommy boy, you mind if I take that first question that I kind of spitfired out earlier? Jag, I gotta ask you this, because though we always start a workout with, I'm not a professional. Everything I say is a suggestion, modified as necessary. I view you as a professional in this sense. So what have you seen in the courtroom as a family court judge that emphasizes the need for male community leadership?
All right. I can tell you it's something that's been on my mind for a while now, and it's something that I see all the time. Family court in South Carolina, one of the things that we are in charge of is juvenile court. So all the kids that are 18 and under that get into some type of trouble are coming into my courtroom. And part of our process on a lot of the cases is we get evaluations done on these kids, and they're very thorough. They're very helpful and detailed backgrounds. So I read those. We typically have court on Tuesdays, and on Friday before, even Mondays, I'll get these evaluations and read them before coming to court. So I know about these kids that are coming in. And I believe at least 80% of the time, if not higher, when I read these evaluations and then we come into court, there is no father involved. A father, unfortunately, either is unknown, is deceased, is in jail, or just has chosen not to have any influence or contact in a kid's life. And so what I see is that absence of male leadership from the home, and also as part of the destruction of the family, these kids are much more likely to get into trouble. I see mothers coming to court. I see grandmothers coming to court. And a lot of times, if the kids are older and getting into trouble, and sometimes people say, well, Mom, why aren't you watching him or monitoring him? Why don't you know he's out doing these things? Well, sometimes Mom is working 2 jobs to keep a roof over their head and clothes on their back and food on the plate. And, no dad around's paying any child support, helping out in any way. So the kid is then looking for family type relationships. Well, gangs are out there, and it's real easy for them to get sucked into that because they want to be wanted. And so I really see that as a huge, huge problem for our kids who are getting into trouble. Now, like Tommy Boy is alluding to, on the other side of the parts that I deal with in family court, we have child abuse and neglect. And unfortunately, we see some horrible things that kids go through. Some of them are getting exposed to domestic violence. Some of them are the subject of abuse and neglect. Some of that is physical. Sometimes it is completely being berated. I can't imagine how a child feels when someone says you're worthless. I wish I hadn't have had you, and follows it up with beating, slapping, kicking, and things that I can't even talk about. I get too upset when I think about it. But it's the destruction of the home and a lack of positive male mentors that really is. We're at a place where I haven't seen in a long time. And I did have in court just on Tuesday this week, I had 7 12-year-olds in juvenile court. And it just blew my mind because things that kids seem to be getting younger and getting into trouble. And some of this wasn't that big of a deal, but if they don't have a male in their life to help guide them, a positive male mentor, an example, then they're just lost and they feel unwanted. And it's one thing to have potentially your mom or a grandmother loving on you and caring for you. But if you're in school, if you're at sporting events, whatever it may be, and you think about the other kids and somebody says, "Where's your dad?" And there's no answer to that's really hurtful. So that's a perspective that I see. So I say that so that I hope that those who do listen in on this understand that the problem is bad, it's growing. And I think, one of the only ways that we're going to be able to solve that, and we're trying to push for it, is maybe some mentorship programs to where we could potentially have guys from F3 be male mentors for some of these kids.
Yeah,
Wow.
You said something that reminds me that we've talked about it before, IJ, but I feel like at the end of any given day, people just want to be seen and heard. And if you go a long enough time with either of those things occurring, you start to get quote unquote sad, or malaise sets in, or ultimately depression. But I mean, the news last night, somebody somewhere didn't feel seen or heard for long enough and acted out in such a way that hurt a lot of other people. Other people hurt themselves just to be seen and heard. And now you've got a whole system in place, unfortunately, where there's opportunity, but we need to step in and fill that void. So you mentioned the mentoring, which is a wonderful idea. Again, I think just something as simple as letting a child know that they have value in the world and a purpose. And if we can connect those young people to those purposes, I mean, what a shift that could be. What other, if you had an F3 magic wand, like what else would you see as an opportunity for us to get involved, regardless of what our zip code is?
Well, I'll say that certainly F3 for me, again, provided that accountability with other men. We also, it's not just the COT at the end of a workout. When we have coffee and conversation, when we have Bibles and biscuits, we have those things. After a while, when guys find out that other guys care about how they feel or what they've done, and they're willing to open up a little bit, it goes a long way. And Tommy Boy, you mentioned finding out things about your grandfather that you didn't know, and how much you can now appreciate what your dad has done. Even with F3, if guys open up with each other and can find out, hey, Tommy Boy's father helped break a cycle of, dysfunction. And it is much harder to break it and get to where y'all are now than it is to continue to pass it on, because unfortunately that's something that I see. I've done it long enough now to basically see, dysfunction past 3 generations. And it's really hard to break it, but between just ignorance, lack of accountability. This is something I grew up with, so this is what I knew. So this is what I do. And I'll tell you, my wife's a elementary school principal. She's been doing it a long time. She sees the same things in schools: a lack of fatherhood, absent fathers, mothers doing the best that they can, families that have been dysfunctional and have a really hard time breaking it. One of the best things that I do get to do in my job is adoptions. So that is something that's a huge step for people, but maybe some of our men can keep that in the back of their mind and think about that as a possibility, because we've got some kids who've been through some bad stuff, who've been unwanted. And we need foster parents. We need people who are willing to adopt. And one of the most joyous occasions I get each year, November, December, is being able to do adoptions and see a family come together and really in court under oath have someone say, you as a child, we chose you and I love you.
You are wanted and welcome in our household.
Exactly. So, just getting the guys to participate and open up, be accountable. I will say that when we do sometimes our coffee and conversation and Bibles and biscuits, I'll look around and we usually have more of our older F3 brothers than we do the younger ones. Well, a lot of the young ones, they really are having to get on into work. And they're on a tight schedule. Maybe we need to think about ways that we can get together more often to where we can have the younger guys and the older guys with the exchange of personal information, lessons learned. This is what happened to me. I don't want this to happen to you. Going back to every year, looking at this is what I would like to tell my younger self. When we're doing that at the beginning of each year. So those are just some of the things, and to be aware that, as Tommy Boy was saying when we began, if we as men if we have kids in school, we need to make sure our kids know that the other kids that they're sitting next to do not necessarily come from the same type of home, and to try to teach them grace and patience and mercy, and if we can example that and teach them that, man, if they can be a friend to that kid who's normally getting picked on or bullied, that changes lives.
Man, gosh, Tommy Boy, you see why I reached out to Jag? I mean, you could quote every bit of that, and it could be part of the manual that we all wish we would have gotten when we brought our babies home from the hospital. Jag, I'll tell you, I think one of the things that we kind of buried the lead on is you've got two of your own. You've got a son and you've got a daughter. And what kind of advice would you give to the dads out there, to love on their kids? I mean, what can we do for our kids to set the next cycle of love and appreciation and respect and discipline and concern and care and being good citizens? I mean, as dads, what can we do with our kids to set them down the path for the future generations of our grandkids and our great grandkids and well beyond our years?
Well, I think first of all, if you're lucky enough to have a wife there at home, you've got a good solid family unit, is to model respect for your wife in front of the kids. They see that, and if they grow up with that, they're much more likely to take on a spouse that they're going to love and respect, and then do the same thing for their children. The next thing is probably just being there. And some of us in our roles as men in trying to do what we think is most important and to accomplish, we get involved in work so much. We overschedule ourselves that we have to be careful about, I've got to be at this meeting and I can't go to this little league game. Child looks up and it's just mom sitting there in the stands. You don't have to be a perfect dad. You just need to be a dad, to be there. And I think that's huge. And I'm very, very lucky when you look at modeling and being an example. I mean, my son's now, he's a captain in the Army. He's in the 10th Mountain Division at Fort Drum in New York. He has now got a 10-month-old, my first grandchild. They've got another one on the way soon. And, when I look at him, it just gives me an immense amount of pride to think somewhere along the line, you did some things right. And even some weekends at National Guard drill, when I could get away with it, I would bring him to drill to meet some of the other guys, in my unit, these other men. And sure enough, I think they really made an influence on him, a positive influence. And so he graduated from the Citadel in 18 and has been doing that. And my daughter, we took her home when she was 3 days old. We adopted her. So we adopted her at birth. So I always get to speak from experience when I'm talking to people about adoption, because it is a huge choice. There's a lot of unknown things out there, but it's almost different in a better way, because you really are choosing a child. And so with our daughter, she's now 19. She is in her second year at Clemson. She's looks like she's going to be on the pre-med track. She doesn't get that kind of intelligence from me. I've never been the smartest guy in the room, but I can work hard. But she is doing well, and she's got a pretty good head on her shoulder. We've had some challenges from time to time, but I think it is being there, modeling certain things, and she's going to do real well. And I think that shows how environment can really be more than genetics. Always had that argument back and forth, but I think the environment for a child, knowing that they're loved and valued and wanted, is just huge. They're secure in that.
Yeah, I mean, what's true in the workplace is also true in the home front, right? Like, if you feel valued and appreciated, a lot of things are improved for everybody involved, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, I think that I know I underthink things too much, and I think I've caught myself before assuming that we're always so much more alike than we are different, and in many aspects we absolutely are. But it's a bit of an Oprah bomb, but there's so much truth to this one. Is you never know the personal hell that somebody else is going through, and so if you could step forward and lead with a little bit of grace and a backpack full of humility, there's a lot of ways that you can have an impact in other people's lives. If nothing else, just not being a hindrance to theirs, right? We don't always have to have an opinion on somebody else's goings on, yet we are so invited to do so all the time through social media. Anybody who's on Nextdoor knows exactly what I'm talking about. And we think we've got everybody else figured out, and that's just a huge mistake. And knowing, because we oftentimes get political about things like court cases, knowing and understanding that there are big-hearted, good-hearted people out there with life experience that are having to make very difficult decisions and rulings over others. That's where that virtuous leadership comes into play. You're not just the judge and the leader because you're the judge. You're the virtuous leader because you have been there, done that, bought the T-shirt, and are trying to instill that knowledge and hopefully drop a ruling that helps somebody out or corrects a situation. So I applaud you for that. I there's a lot of training there that I don't understand, and I am tipping my F3 cap to you, sir. Jag, that's you're doing the Lord's work, man.
Well, I think it's a calling. I appreciate that compliment. It gets really hard at times, because your ruling is going to make a difference in the life of a child. And some cases are really tough when you think about if a family is splitting up, and you're looking at, well, is custody going to go to dad or to mom, or how is this going to work out? And that's a heavy burden to bear from time to time. And there is a lot of us as judges, we have to be careful about, I think they call it compassion fatigue, or, where you get a lot of this negative stuff and worry about doing the right thing. And you hear these tough cases, it can really wear you down. But that's where I say F3 has really come in to help me. Shield locks, just our groups being able to sit down and talk to each other. If I work out in the morning, my attitude the rest of the day is better, and they can tell it when I walk into the courtroom most of the time. And so these things that we are learning about leadership and trying to pass on, they do include things like mercy and grace and patience, and being able to really listen. Let me tell you one quick example from some being involved in all this. We're helping out with the Bethel Men's Shelter second Tuesday night every month with F3 in Rock Hill, and I like to get involved with that, and had been doing that a while. Well, a couple of weeks ago, I had bench warrant hearings for guys who are not paying their child support. So they're getting picked up because they hadn't paid. Nobody can find them. Well, sooner or later, they trip up, they get picked up, they get put in jail, and they are in my courtroom basically the next day or a couple of days later. And I hear stories from them all the time, and there's lots of excuses, and there's a lot of the same ones over and over. And I had one man who came in, and he is now working. He had about 4 payments in a row from wage withholding, but I talked a minute to get a few questions asked and answered, and he said that he was homeless. And I looked and I thought, he looks a little bit familiar. And he said, without me asking, he said, I'm at the Bethel Men's Shelter. And I said, I thought I recognized you. So I knew what he was telling me was the truth. He was struggling, but he was trying, and he was coming in. So I said, you're working now? I said, putting you in jail is not going to do any good. I'm dismissing the bench warrant. You go back to work and you keep paying what you can when you can and keep trying. And, we've got 3 men from the Bethel Men's Shelter who are now part of F3 Rock Region. It's just incredible to me, including an 18-year-old. And one of the other guys has been picking him up and bringing him to workouts and to coffee and conversation and things like that. And so now that is a direct influence on a young person. To me, that's just incredible. But that takes a lot of giving, and it takes somebody really stepping forward and making that contact and saying, you come on. I don't care that you're in a homeless shelter. That doesn't matter to me. You can be a part of our group. We'll help you get better in life.
Yeah.
Tommy boy, I don't know if you felt convicted. I felt convicted a couple times.
Are we supposed to say convicted in front of a judge, though?
Yeah, well, there's not a bailiff over my shoulder, and I don't think he could. I don't think he can tell me where I need to report when I'm not currently under oath. But there were a couple things he said in there. I am guilty sometimes of I've got a late meeting that I need to attend and I can't be there for whatever the reason is. And there have been times I've had arguments with my wife in front of the kids, and my son or daughter will say, "Daddy, why were you and Mommy yelling at each other?" And dude, you want to talk about feeling this big?
Yeah.
I'm better than that. We're better than that. What am I doing? These are the things we hope they don't carry on, and our kids don't think of, well, Daddy was mean, Daddy was a loud dad, or whatever it was. But we got to be reminded that sometimes we truly need to keep our focus on what matters the most, and that is our wife, our kids, our church, our workplaces on the outskirts, the things that we have direct influence over, our concentrica. That's the stuff that truly matters. Jag, thank you for not only the advice you've shared with us, but thank you for being open and talking as a professional, but as a friend, and being just honest with us. This is the type of stuff that, quite honestly, I think every dad and every leader really needs to remember, that our influence starts at home. Our influence starts in the household. And we will either be the example for what our kids should follow, or we will be the example for what our kids don't want to be. And I'd prefer being the first part. My dad was a good man. My dad was a kind man. My dad was good to my mom. My dad was there for me. Those are the things we really need to work on. So a little conviction on my heart, something that I need to kind of take home on more often than I do. But Jag, it has been an honor and a privilege for you to share with us. Do you have any closing thoughts for the men who are tuning in, listening? This might be their first time they've ever heard a message like this, but anything you want to share with the guys who might be listening in and might want to just learn from your knowledge?
Well, just again, you don't have to be a perfect dad. You don't have to be a perfect husband. Just keep persevering, learning. We all make mistakes, and just be there, do the best you can. Don't give up when you do mess up. It's like we get out there and we compliment ourselves because maybe when we started we could barely run a mile, and then maybe a few months later we're able to do a 5K and then a 10K, and you learn to just keep one step in front of the other. Just keep it going even when you don't feel good, when you feel like giving up. Same thing for marriages, same thing for parenthood. You just keep persevering. Remember, the goal is the long run. It is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
I'm writing it all down. I just can't write fast enough. Jag, it was a pleasure to meet you. I look forward to locking shields with you sometime in the gloom in the near future. I hope not too distant, at least. But IJ, thanks for making this connection. Jag, thanks for speaking from the heart and from the mind. It's a constant reminder that it's one thing to say that you're an organization of leaders. It's another thing to go out and be a strong leader outside of the workout and in our community, and especially in our home, because somebody's always watching and it matters. All right, Podpaxers, you got some inspiration to take you through the weekend at least, if not the rest of the year. Until next time, be good or be good at it.
Love you, man. Thank you so much.